Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I hope you are having a fantastic day and enjoying your week. My name is Catherine, Catherine with a C. I know the subtitles like to write Catherine with a K, but it is Catherine with a C, and I am a business English teacher. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to go through the most uncommon irregular verbs, or you could refer to them as more advanced irregular verbs. Now, I do have a video on the most common irregular verbs that you will come across in the English language. This will also be very helpful to you if you are at an intermediate level or just want to refresh your knowledge of irregular verbs. And of course, because they are used the most often, you are more likely to come across them in your English conversations, your workplace. You will definitely need to know how to use these in the past tense. So definitely check that video out. But before you do, let's have a look at the more advanced, the more uncommon irregular verbs. So a quick recap. What is a verb, a regular verb? Well, a verb is a doing word and it changes, it follows the same pattern when it changes into the past tense. And that pattern is usually just adding ed on the end. So walk becomes walked. Talk becomes talked. Decide becomes decided. Change becomes changed. So therefore, by that logic, an irregular verb is one that does not follow this pattern. If I say swim, swam, swum, I'm sure memories of your English lessons as a child at school come flooding back to you. Swim, swam, swum, begin, began, begun. Possibly bad memories, because I know that learning English grammar is boring and repetitive and not very exciting, not very interesting. But those are examples of irregular verbs where the word changes 3 times and follows no rule. It just changes depending on the word itself. So today we will look at the most uncommon irregular verbs. Some of them you will need to know, some of them possibly not. So without further hesitation, click like on this video, subscribe if you have not already, and let's get started. Abide, abode, or abided/abode again. Now, why does this one have 4 options? Well, that's because depending on whether you're looking at American English or British English, you will either say abided or abode when talking about the past participle. So abide is obviously the base form, abode is past tense, abided or abode is the past participle. And this is the structure I will do throughout the entire video. The base form, the past simple, and then the past participle. So if you're not sure which tense I'm referring to, follow that structure. Base form, past simple, past participle. So here are some examples for you for abide. Now, abide means to follow the rules or to stick to the rules. I like to abide by the rules because then I don't get in trouble. I abode by all of the rules set by the business, but I was still fired. He had abided by the rules, but was fired. Or he had abode by the rules, but was fired. Arise, arose, arisen. So base form, arise. I arise with the sun. Now, as you can feel, this is a very strange sentence. We would never really say I arise. We would say I wake up. But for the sake of this video and understanding the base form, I arise in the morning. I arise with the sun. I am sorry for the problems that arose during the meeting. Past tense, arose during the meeting. Some issues had arisen during last month's board meeting. Awake, awoke, and awoken. Is he awake? Now, the past simple awoke is rarely used in spoken conversation. You'll see it often in written communication, in creative writing, in novels, in stories. But if you were to say, I arose this morning, you might get some strange looks and people might think you're trying to impersonate Shakespeare. You would be much more likely to say, I woke up yesterday. I woke up at 7 a.m. this morning. But for the purpose of this video, and so you know, I awoke to the sound of birds. I had awoken when my cat jumped on the bed with a bird in its mouth. Behold, beheld, beheld. This is a sight to behold. Look how beautiful it is. I beheld the most beautiful sunset I had ever seen. The ancient ruins are beheld by millions of tourists every year. Now, beheld means to take in sights, to look at something and take it in for all its glory. It's like more than looking at something. I don't just look at the view, I behold the view. Bid, bade, and bidden. Now, this is not to be confused with to bid on something, to put money on something, because that type of bid doesn't change. I bid on a painting. I bid yesterday. I had placed a bid when someone outbid me. This form of bid, bade, bidden is in the context of saying goodbye. I bid you goodbye. It's just a fancy, traditional, old-fashioned way of saying, I'm saying goodbye. I bid you farewell. I'm saying goodbye. I'm saying farewell. You would only really hear this if you watch shows like Pride and Prejudice or Bridgerton. It's not used in modern day English, but again, if you're reading in English, you may come across it. I bade him goodbye, past tense. So, old-fashioned way of saying, yesterday I said goodbye to him. He had bidden me good day when the car stopped and asked for directions. He had said goodbye to me when a car came along and asked for directions. You can feel with these examples that I've given you that it's not very common in spoken English. As I said, unless you're born in the 1800s or you're acting in a period drama, you're not going to use this regularly. Broadcast, broadcast, broadcast. I broadcast a live lesson every Sunday. Last week, the radio broadcast a fantastic show about English. The show had been broadcast for 20 years before it was finally ended. So broadcast does not change, and if you're unsure what it means to air something, to put something out for people to watch. Broadcast on TV, broadcast on the radio. When did they broadcast this information? Oh, they broadcast this information yesterday. Burst, burst, and burst. Now, this is the action of something happening very quickly and either liquid bursting or something happening in a very quick, fast-paced, and explosive way. So when you burst a bubble, it goes and all the liquid inside pops out. When a river bursts its banks, all the water explodes out. Something can also burst into flames because it's this action of quickly erupting. So I burst into flames. The house burst into flames and we lost everything. I had been watching as the house burst into flames. Base form, past simple, and past participle are the same. The word does not change. Cast, cast, and cast. Now we have a couple of meanings for the word cast. The first is if you break a bone, you will have a cast put on your arm or your hand or your leg. But in the way I'm using it, it is to be chosen to act in a movie or a show. Actors are cast into the movie. And as you can see, it does not change. Base form, past form, it's the same. I want to be cast in this new movie. I was so excited to be cast as a presenter for this show. He had been cast in many movies starring very well-known actors. Clothe, clad, and clothed. Now, these, of course, are clothes. They are an item of clothing. But what we are talking about here is the verb to be wearing clothes, the action of wearing items on your body. I did consider removing this one from the list because it is very rarely used. But again, you may see it in written English. So I clothe my baby in designer means the action of putting clothes on your baby, the action of putting designer clothes on your baby. The soldier was clad in armor and protective garments, past tense. He had been clothed in all red when he was found drunk outside the bar. Again, more commonly in spoken English, we would just say he was wearing, or I like to put designer clothes on my baby, or I had met him when he was wearing. But in written English, you may see clothed, clad, clothed. Dive, dove, and dived. I like to dive. I dove into the swimming pool. I had dived into the swimming pool to save my friend. Now, there are arguments over which one of these is correct, dove or dived, and which way to use them, which is why I only have two options up on the screen. Dove comes more from American and Canadian English, and dived is used by the majority of the rest of English speakers. So this would then make dive a regular verb, becoming dived in the past tense. But the presence of dove and the use of dove means we need to pay attention to this one and add it to our irregular verbs list. Some people use dove as the past participle and dived as the past simple, and some use dived as the past participle and dove as the past simple. But whatever feels right for you, if you want to keep it as simple as possible and use dive, dived, dived, that's fine. If you want to use dive, dived, dove, or dive, dove, dived, that is also fine. Whatever feels right to you, this one has a bit of flexibility. There's no wrong or right. Personally, I would say I can dive. I dived into the water. He dived into the water. I wouldn't use dove. But it does exist, and when I see it, I understand it is the past participle of dive. Dwell and dwelt. So dwell, dwelt, dwelt. Now, dwell is to live somewhere, to reside somewhere, to have somewhere as your home. And it doesn't necessarily mean a house, because animals can also dwell in places. It's just somewhere you call home, somewhere you live, somewhere you spend your time, you sleep. It can also be used to describe a state of emotion. So if someone dwells on the past, it means they're constantly living in the past. They're constantly thinking about the past. She constantly dwells on the past. She cannot move forward. The frog dwells in moist, humid areas. But then if we want to use it as the past simple or past participle, when she was 20, she dwelt in London. She had dwelt on the past a lot recently, and now she feels ready to move forwards. Flee, fled, fled. I would flee if that ever happened to me. Now, flee just means to escape, to run away from. She fled the home yesterday. He had fled because of the political situation in his country. Fling, flung, flung. Now, to fling something is an action of throwing, but there's also this kind of understanding that it's thrown in a very clumsy way. It's not a good throw. It's, oh, I fling something. Imagine you're irritated and you walk into a room and trip over a blanket and you fling the blanket out of the way. It's like there's feeling behind it, clumsy feeling behind it. So I fling things all the time. He flung the blanket out of the way. He had flung the football without looking, and that's why it crashed through his dad's shed window. Forbid, forbade, and forbidden. I forbid you to go out with your friends. My manager forbade me from talking to the client, but I did it anyway. Now, actually, I want to make a point because you can say forbid and forbade as past simple. So whilst I just said my manager forbade me from doing something, you can also say my manager forbid me from talking to the client, but I did it anyway. You can use forbid as the base form and the past simple. But the past participle is definitely forbidden. He had forbidden me from speaking with the client, but I did it anyway, and that is why I now don't have a job. Forecast and forecasted or forecast. So the weather forecast for this week is: the weather was forecasted as being pleasant. The weather had been forecasted as being pleasant. The weather had been forecast as being pleasant. You can use these two interchangeably. You can choose which one you want to use. So you can either choose to have it as forecast, 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 no changes, like broadcast, or you can use forecasted. It's up to you. Forsake, forsook, and forsaken. Now, to forsake something can either mean to give up, or it can kind of mean to abandon or leave something. So she had no choice but to forsake her own dreams and pursue a more practical career. She gave up her dreams to do something else. He forsook his old friends when he became successful. He gave up, he abandoned his old friends when he became successful. He knew that his actions would lead him to be forsaken by the community, but he couldn't ignore his own happiness. So he had to give up something, the community, in order to follow his happiness. Handwrite, handwrote, and handwritten. I like to handwrite my scripts. The most amazing thing about Shakespeare's work was he hand wrote everything. They didn't have computers in his time. The teacher said our essay must be handwritten. I cannot use a laptop. Now, inlay can be a noun and a verb, and they kind of mean the same thing. To apply inlay is to apply something to an object. It's inlaid in the object. But when using it as a verb, it means to embed, to put something into something else, to inlay it, to place it within something. I'm creating a PowerPoint presentation and I want to inlay some images that I've found on the internet. The artist carefully inlaid beautiful precious stones throughout his artwork. Input, in British English we would say input, input, input. I input something. It was input yesterday, it has been input. But American English they would say inputted. I want to input this here. It was inputted yesterday. It has been inputted. So again, neither is wrong or right. Personally, I would say it has been input. But whatever you feel more comfortable with, you can choose that option. Leap, leapt, leaped. You need to leap over this barrier. He leapt over the barrier. He leaped over the barrier. Leapt and leaped can be used interchangeably. There's no right or wrong here. Mow, mowed, and mown. Now, to mow is to cut grass. I'm not sure why it has its own particular name. It probably comes from agriculture and the farming industry, but you mow the grass. So this weekend, I will mow the grass. He mowed the lawn yesterday. The lawn has been mown. We don't need to do it again. Overdraw, overdrew, and overdrawn. Now, to overdraw or to go overdrawn is to take out more money than you have in your bank account. So most banks will allow you a £100, £200, £500 balance that you can go into. You have to pay that back, of course, but you can spend that money if you need to. This is called your overdraft. So if you go into that money, you are overdrawing. I will overdraw. This month I overdrew more than I was allowed to. I need to pay it back next month. I can't come out this week. I am currently overdrawn, meaning you've taken out all the money allowed to you in the bank. You don't have any more money. Overhear, overheard, overheard. Can you be quiet, please? I want to overhear what the table next to us is saying. I overheard yesterday that the new politician has been stealing money. Now there's something we don't hear every day. I had overheard that they are looking to promote you in the workplace, but it's just a rumor. I'm not 100% sure. Overtake, overtook, overtaken. Now, we can use this word to describe a car going past another car. In British English, we would say overtaking someone. This is overtaking. But it also just means to pass someone. So let's say you and I both go to school, we study the same thing at the same time, but as we're studying, you are learning quicker than me. You are overtaking me. And therefore, you finish quicker than me, so you overtook me. So, as I just gave you the example, I want to overtake my sister. My sister overtook me and finished university quicker than I did. I was overtaken in the race by someone faster than me. Preset, preset, preset. Now, of course, a preset can be a noun for something that is pre-created, like a template. But the verb for preset is, as it says, it's pre, so prior, set. It's something that was set or decided or chosen earlier. So the lights in my house are on a preset timer. They come on at 7 p.m. every night. It was preset to start at 3 p.m., but it was late. The movie had been preset to start at 7 p.m., but the device wasn't working and it started 20 minutes later than it should have. Rid, rid, and rid. Now, to be rid of something or to get rid of something is to throw it away, get rid of it, not have it in your life anymore. I am so happy I am rid of my bad habit. He got rid of his last girlfriend. I thought I had been rid of the mice in my home, but I just found a baby one under the sofa. Shear, shore, and shorn. Now, to shear something is a form of cutting, but in a particular way. So something that is shear has been cut all the way through with one movement. So think of if you were to snap a metal pole in half and it would have this straight edge on it. We would call this shearing. It's kind of snapped in one movement. So cutting down a tree is not shearing down a tree because there's quite a lot of movement going into cutting down a tree. But something that just snaps or happens in one way, we can describe it as shear or shearing. That doesn't look very strong. I think it will shear off. Someone broke into my house, I can tell, because the door handle was sheared off. I was so angry with the new builders. They had shorn off something that they shouldn't have. Shed, shed, and shed. Now, the noun is, of course, somewhere where you work in the garden or with cars. You keep lots of your tools. But the verb to shed means to get rid of something you don't need anymore. So, for example, dogs will shed their fur, cats shed their fur, lizards shed their skin, snakes shed their skin. They're getting rid of this outer layer that they don't need. So, for example, dogs will shed their fur. My dog shed his fur all over the house. My dog had shed his fur everywhere, which was why I hired a cleaner. Slay, slew, and slain. Now, if there are any fantasy or sci-fi readers out there, this will be for you. It's not a word we use every day in English, but you definitely see it in creative science fiction, fantasy writing. To slay something is to kill something, but almost as though you are the hero. So there is a huge battle that happens and you come out on top. You come out the hero. To slay a dragon. He slew the dragon with ease. The dragon was slain by the hero of the story. Slink, slunk, and slunk. Now, to slink somewhere is to kind of go somewhere in secret, like you're slinking round corners. You don't want to be seen by anyone. It's a very secretive way of moving. To slink is to be secretive. So the past tense, slunk, he slunk around the corner looking for any evidence that his boss was ready to fire him. A snake had slunk into the room and I knew because my dog was barking at it. Sow, sowed, and sown. Now I've got two of these, sow, sowed, and sown. They are both the same, but one is spelt with an O and one is spelt with an E. Why is that? Well, the one spelt with an O refers to agriculture and farming, putting seeds in the ground. You sow seeds. We sowed the seeds yesterday. The seeds had been sown, but you also sow clothes with an E. I sew my own clothes. He sewed the hole in his clothes. The pillow had been sewn together. Speed, sped, and sped. I don't want to speed. He sped through the village as the police chased him. I got a ticket at work. I hadn't realized I had sped through the traffic lights. Stink, stank, stunk. Now, to stink is more than smell, something that smells really bad. It stinks in here. It stank yesterday, but I cleaned the entire house. I'm so glad you got rid of the dead mouse. It had stunk all day. Stride, strode, and stridden. I'm laughing as I'm saying this one because stridden, it's never really used. But again, creative writing, if you're reading classical English pieces or you like reading intellectual articles in English, the National Geographic, for example, likes to use a lot of really detailed vocabulary and it's very creative writing. So you might come across a word like this. Stride. His stride is very wide. Now, in case you don't know what a stride is, it's a way of walking. It's how you walk. He strode into the room with confidence. He had stridden into the room with confidence, but once he saw the 500 people waiting for him, he suddenly felt nervous. We're nearly there. Only 10 more to go. I know this is a long video, and it's not one of my most exciting videos, I know that, but grammar often isn't the most exciting topic, but it's definitely worth knowing. It just helps you to be more understood and sound more intellectual, more professional, more advanced in the workplace. Swear, swore, and sworn. Now, of course, we have swear words, but I'm not talking about swear words. I'm talking about when you agree to something that is a legal contract, a binding contract. So I swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, as you say when you go to court, or as you see on TV when people go to court. It means the same as I promise. So she swore that she would not lie. She had sworn she wouldn't lie, but it turned out she had. Thrust, thrust, and thrust. Now, of course, the noun thrust is to do with speed, how fast you go into something, or how fast something is going. But you can also describe yourself as being thrust into a situation. And that means maybe you weren't prepared, you weren't ready. It's like throwing someone into something. I was thrust into the spotlight. My boss thrust me into a room full of people I didn't know. I had been thrust into this project with absolutely no experience, but I'm so glad I had the opportunity to do it. Undergo, underwent, and undergone. Now, undergo is to go through something, typically something very impactful or serious or might have an effect on you. So we typically say, I undergo surgery. Or I underwent surgery. I had undergone surgery, which was why I felt really tired. Undertake, undertook, and undertaken. Now, to undertake something means to promise to do something, to be responsible for something. I want to undertake a new project at work. I undertook more responsibility at work than I've ever had before. I had undertaken a new position at work, but I'm not really sure if I'm enjoying it. Weave, wove, woven. Now, of course, we can talk about fabric being woven. Weave, fabric. We weave fabric, but it also refers to a movement. Like, as we weave fabric, you go in and out, in and out, in and out. So you can weave through a crowd. Go in and out of a crowd. You could say a snake weaves along the grass. We wove our way through the crowd. We wanted to see the pop star that was there. We had woven our way to the front of the queue. We wanted to see the Mona Lisa up close. Weep, wept, and wept. Now, to weep is to cry. I weep when I see sad films. I wept yesterday when I watched Finding Nemo. He had wept when we had broken up, but I think it was for the best. Withdrawn, withdrew, and withdrawn. Now, withdraw, withdrew, and withdrawn. Now, to withdraw is to take money out. To withdraw money. You take it out of your bank account, out of an ATM. I withdraw money every Friday. I withdrew $200 last week. I had withdrawn money on Wednesday, so why do I have no money on Friday? Withhold, withheld, and withheld. Now, to withhold is to not give information to someone. Maybe to keep something to yourself, or you've been told by your organization or business that you cannot share this information, so you withhold it from the client or customer or reporter. The business is known to withhold information. They withheld the information when being investigated by the police. They had withheld all of their customer contact information because they wanted to keep it for themselves. And last one today, withstand, withstood, and withstood. Now, to withstand something is to stay strong, to not be moved, to not change your opinion, to have a lot of pressure put on you, but you not fail or crumble or feel small or feel like you can't do it. I withstand a lot of rejection on a daily basis. He withstood the negative information he was being given by his boss. Despite all of the rumors in the media and the press, the company withstood its negative reputation and continued to be successful. Test yourself by creating some example sentences with these base forms, past simple and past participle. Maybe not in the comments because we might be here forever, and I know this is already a very long video, but write down an example for each and let me know how you get on. As I said, a lot of them are not used very often, but you may find that you work in an industry where you do need to use these. Maybe you work in finance, maybe you work in PR, maybe you're a creative writer. Anyway, even if you're not using them every day, it can never harm you to renew and refresh your information, your grammar skills, and just broaden your vocabulary. And that is what I'm here to help you do. Broaden your vocabulary, sound more fluent, sound more advanced when you're speaking with your colleagues. So if you enjoyed today's video and you learned something, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.